Hey everyone, welcome. What I want to do in this video is quickly run through the commissioner tools and talk a little bit about what it's like to be a commissioner of a league on Pennant Chase, what it takes to get your own league set up, and answer some of the frequently asked questions that I hear. I'm recording this video in May of 2020, so we're still in the coronavirus pandemic, and a surge of new users have come to pennantchase.com looking to get their baseball fix, looking to fill the void of no fantasy baseball, and they've come to pennantchase.com looking to start a league with their friends, some of them with their fantasy league that they play with, and they're trying sim baseball for the first time as an alternative to fantasy baseball. And so uh, we've had just an influx of people coming, starting their own leagues, asking various questions. And I thought this would be a good time to create a video that's all about the commissioner tools, what it's like to be a commissioner. And so you can kind of, if you have the time, you can watch through this and get a sense for all the different tools and sort of the level of effort it takes to be a commissioner. Or if you already are a commissioner, maybe you'll learn something new that you didn't already know. I would say for the most part, the vast majority of the new people coming to the site and starting their own leagues are really doing a great job and seem to be understanding the commissioner tools very well, which is great, a great relief to me. It means they're pretty intuitive. They must be laid out pretty well because I've really found very few problems from people. And that's surprising considering these people are brand new to the website. Most people who have been commissioners on Pennant Chase historically have been around the site for a while and have a pretty good feel for it. But what has happened in the coronavirus pandemic is that people are coming to the site, they're quickly just jumping into their own league and they're starting it right away without really having any prior experience of Pennant Chase. And they're mostly doing it really, really well. So I think that speaks very highly to the quality of the commissioner tools. But I still just want to run through it for those who might be struggling with a few things. And so um, a couple of the topics that I really want to touch on are what happens when you get your league? How do you what what's are your set of players? How do you import players? I get this question a lot. A lot of people say, "Look, I want to run a league and I want it to be, only players from 1995 to 1999. Can I do this?" Yes, you absolutely can. You have total control over what your league looks like, what kind of players are in it, and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing you're probably going to want to figure out is, okay, which players am I going to have in my league? When you built your league, you might have picked a particular pool of players, and that got your league started with an initial set of players. But what you're going to want to do now is decide what is your real set of players going to be for your league. And so the first thing you might want to do is come down here. And first, let me just quickly go over commissioner tools. So you've got your commissioner tools link if you're the commissioner, and then it's broken into these sections. So you've got league basics, homepage and design, schedules and drafts. Over here, you've got user management. So these are the users that are in your league. You've got team management. You've got player management. And just keep in mind, you might see a couple things here that are only accessible to me as the webmaster of the website. You're not going to have access to every single link that's on here. There are a couple of them that are just special to me, but for the most part, you've got everything here. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do is if you're starting fresh and you want a whole new set of players, you're going to delete the players that are currently in your league if you imported players initially. Or let's say you're kind of rebooting, you played a season, now you want to play a different season with a different set of players. You're going to want to just wipe everyone out, right? So delete all players. You can obviously get a little more granular here. You could delete just free agents. You could delete just retired players. You could just delete players on a team. Let's say if you had, imported the wrong set or you wanted to import a different set of players, you could just wipe players out on a particular team. But anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole delete process. It'll give you a little warning here. Once you do a delete, it's final. There's no way to recover that. I do have archives of the Pennant Chase database, but it takes a long, long time to recover those archives. It's not a practical thing. It's not something that I can do. So unless there was a dire emergency. So when you do a delete, it's final. You have to keep that in mind. So once you've deleted your players, the next thing you're going to want to probably do is import new players. So you're going to go back down to player management, and This import historic player or team is your key link here when you want to talk about importing new players to your league. So I'm going to click on that, and here are your different options on the import player page. So you could import a single individual player. I'm just going to start typing, let's say I want to import Tom Seaver. I type Seaver, I search. It took me right to Tom Seaver because he's the only Seaver in the database. And so now I've got all his years. These are batting years. He's a pitcher. So pitchers, you're going to want to scroll down and make sure you're clicking on the pitching season that you're picking. So let's say, I'm importing the 1972 Tom Seaver. It takes me here. If Tom Seaver were already in my league, it would give me an option to replace the existing Tom Seaver if I wanted to do that. Or I could just add a new Tom Seaver. Typically you don't want to have duplicate players in your league. So if he already exists and you wanted to import a new season, you could do that here. But you could import him right into a specific team or as a free agent, etc. Force age. So if you were, for example, playing some sort of fictional league and you wanted to import a player and have him be a quote unquote rookie, in your league, if you were playing with progression or something like that, you could start him out as a 21-year-old rookie or something like that, right? But if you leave this blank, it's just going to import him as the real age that he was in that particular year. And age really doesn't matter in the game unless you're going to play with progression year after year, and the player's stats are going to change based on their age. And we can talk about progression a little later in this video. So I'm going to go back to the import player page here. So that's an individual player. You could also import an entire team. So you could pick your team, like let's just say I picked the Boston Red Sox. I say get the years. And now I've got every single year from 2019 all the way back to the 1901. So you could import an entire team of Boston Red Sox. Here's your whole list of guys, and then import full team down at the bottom. And this would allow you to import the entire 2019 Boston Red Sox roster. Again, they could be free agents. You could import them right onto a team. You can set minimum numbers of innings pitched and at bats to qualify for import. So like if there was some guy on the Red Sox in 2019 that only got 10 at bats, you probably don't want to import that guy because he's not statistically relevant for a sim game. You can say do not import if the player is already on another team. So again, if you're trying to avoid duplicate players, you can also auto assign players if you're going to put them on a roster, say for example, and you could say auto assign players to minors, so that will make sure that the major league roster is not overloaded with too many players. That's importing a specific team. So let's say you were going to run some kind of league where you wanted to replay the 2019 season. You might want to go this route. You might want to say I'm going to import team by team. But probably the most common thing you're going to do is this import best players from a range. So what this does, it imports the desired number of players up to 100 at a time at any position from a range of years. So let's say you were going to do what we were talking about earlier. You want your league to be 1995 to 1999. This is the set of players you want in your league. So you go 95 to 99, and now you can just start importing as many players as you want. So, depending on how many teams you're going to have on your league, that's going to determine how many players you import. So if you're going to have like about a 10 to 12 team league, you're probably going to want about 30 players at any given position, like catcher. Outfielders, you're probably going to want about 100. Starting pitchers, you're probably going to want about 100. Relief pitchers, you're probably going to want about 100. That'll give you enough players in about a 10 to 12 team league. If you're going to be playing a bigger league, like 30 teams or something like that, you're going to want to import more players. And you can keep importing as many as you want. So I can go down here and I can say, I want to import, 100 of the best catchers from 95 to 99. You could click import. It's going to then bring all these players into your league. They're going to be free agents. And then you could run this again and import another 100 catchers if you wanted to, right? So you can keep doing this, and you could technically get the full universe of players from a particular year range if you wanted to. And so that's going to be the best way to populate your league with the players that you want. Now, we set this range here, but there's another thing you're going to want to do, and that's over on the very first link, change league settings. This is probably the key page. It kind of drives most things for your league. It's all the basic settings, and it's broken down into sections. So you've got like roster rules, how big is the roster going to be? What's the max position players allowed? Things like, if you're going to play with contracts, do I want to clear contracts when an owner quits the league? Most likely you don't. Things like that, trades per season. But I'm going to skip down here. You can kind of look through these, and there are various options in here. I'm going to skip down. There's, setting injuries and fatigue. There's custom tags. The people use this for a variety of things. It's just your own creative tagging that you want to do on players. You could, tag players as franchise players, or whatever you want. People use this in all sorts of creative ways. There's your keepers and contracts if you're going to play some sort of keeper league from season to season. Then down here, you've got changing player stats. And what this does is, let's say you're going to play a 95 to 99 season like we were talking about earlier, you're going to want to make sure your historical stats range here syncs up to that. So you're going to want to put, here I would want to put 1995 to 1999. So what that does is that tells the system, this is the universe of years we're playing with. And then you can decide to let your owners change their player stats within that range. So, if you've got the 1995 version of Mark McGwire, but you really want the 1998 version of Mark McGwire, you could switch that Mark McGwire if this is turned on. And you'd only be able to switch Mark McGwire within this year range that has been set by the commissioner. So you're going to want to make sure this syncs up with whatever year you selected when you imported your players. I want to jump now to creating teams. So let's say you've got your players. Now the question is, how do I get my standings and my divisions and everything to look the way I want to? So the next thing you're probably going to want to come in and do is edit leagues and divisions, right? So this is where you're going to name your league. So if you were playing, you can do American League. Over here on this side could be National League, right? And you can do whatever you want in terms of wildcards. How many wildcards do you want? This DH option right now doesn't matter because Pennant Chase only supports the DH. There's no pitchers hitting. The website has been around for 12 years, and it's always been a DH-only website. So that probably isn't going to change anytime soon, but maybe someday it will. That's why this drop-down is here. And then you start naming your divisions, and you can name any division anything you want. It's not going to show up in the standings unless a team has been assigned to that division. So once you've got your division set up, you're going to go to add or edit teams, right? So your league is going to come with probably about 12 teams. So you can edit a team, and you can change the owner. And so this is a really good question that I get a lot is people start a league and they say, how can I assign myself to a team? I'm the commissioner. This is how you do it. You just go to edit team, you select an owner, you'll be in that list, and you can give yourself any team you want, just like you can give any team to any player who joins your league. When a player joins your league, they're going to automatically be assigned to an open team if there's an open team available, but then you can come in here and edit teams and change the owner of the team. And then here's where you assign the division. So whatever divisions you created, you can pick which division this team is in. Now, if no team is assigned to a division, it's not going to show up in the standings. So you'll notice here I've got, League A not used division. The division is called not used. And if I go to the standings page, you can see that, that division doesn't show up at all because there's no team under it. So that's your basics in terms of importing players, setting up divisions, setting up teams. We talked a little bit about league rules. There's so much on here. This could be an extremely long video. I just encourage you to go through and kind of look through everything here. Your league will come with a schedule, but if you create a bigger league than a 12-team league, you're going to want to create your own schedule. you can go to create edit schedule, and what I would recommend is going down here to the automated schedule builder option 3, and you have some options here to kind of build out a schedule as you want. Um, you can do it within leagues, all leagues, and the schedule builder is not perfect. It takes some work to get the schedule that you probably will want. It's going to take some massaging, so you can add chunks of games at a time. You could say all leagues and just build, interleague play, or you could say I'm only going to build, I'm going to build, let's say, day 1 through day 20 is going to be games only within the league, and so I'm just going to add 20 games. And you can say only games within the division if you want. So you could add a chunk of games that are just every team playing their own division, or you could just say every team playing another team in that league. And then you can choose the length of your series. So if you want to do, 3-game series, whatever you want, 4-game, 2-game, it can be whatever you want. Every series is the same. You say build schedule. That did it for League A. Now, if you were doing that, you probably want to then come and do League B and click the button again and build the League B part of the schedule. So you got to kind of do it in chunks. It does take some work. There's another option if you're going to play with like 30 teams, like a real major league schedule. Then a great option under schedules and drafts is import schedule from league or MLB. So this actually allows you to either import a schedule that you've found in another league that you liked, or it allows you down here, option 2, to import a recent MLB schedule. So you can see we've got all the way back to 2012. You could pick any MLB schedule, and then all you have to do is you have to map the real MLB team to whatever team in your league you want to map them to. So obviously this only works if you can map every team in your league to a team in the major league schedule. And if you can do that, then you can import the major league schedule and you've got a real major league schedule. Um, so that's a quick blurb on schedules. Um, I'll talk a little now. So here over here you got season tasks and you got simulate game. So this is probably the second biggest question I get after the question about importing players is how do I simulate games? Can games be simulated automatically? How do I control the length of time between simulations? Okay, so here's the very critical point is that in custom leagues, nothing happens automatically. The system will not automatically simulate games for you. You can't create any kind of setting that's going to trigger the simulations. There are two ways in custom leagues that games get simulated. Either the commissioner simulates games on demand, or you can allow the other users in your league to also simulate games from the My League list page. So I'm going to go through both of those options. So this button here, simulate game, this takes you to your schedule, right? And it's going to show you all your unplayed games on your schedule. And from here, you have basically 3 options. You could sim one individual game, right? I could just click this button and it will go through and it will sim one individual game. Or I can sim this entire day quickly just by hitting this button up here. So when I click sim day, it's going to sim day 63. So it's going to sim all these games on day 63. Or if I were going at a faster pace than that in my league, I could actually sim through a certain day. So let's say I wanted to sim 5 days at once. I can sim all the way through day, say 68, and say go, and then that's going to simulate day 63, day 64, day 65, 66, 67, and 68 all at once. So those are your 3 different options as the commissioner from the Sim League page. You can do this whenever you want on demand, as often as you want, at your pace, right? Most leagues have some sort of cadence to how they will simulate games. They'll say, okay, every day I'm going to sim 3 games in the morning, and then you'll have the rest of the day to adjust your roster. Or some leagues will say, okay, look, I'm going to sim 1 game every 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. So we'll sim one game and then you have a chance to react to that, adjust your lineups, then we'll sim again, right? It's kind of up to you. All custom leagues do it at different styles, different paces. The key element here, though, is allowing the other users in your league to also sim games. That would take the burden off of you as the commissioner being the only person who's simming the games. If you have a pretty active group of users, they can help you sim games throughout the season. So how do you do that? Well, you got to go back to change league settings. So that very first link here, and there's a section down here that is called user sims. So you see on this section, there are just two different options here. Users can sim. So this is either on or off. You're either saying, yes, I'm going to allow my users to simulate games, or no, I'm not going to allow them to simulate games. I, as the commissioner, am going to do the whole thing. You might want to, like, you're going to turn this off if you're just, as the commissioner, going to be in total control of things. Or a typical time to turn this off might be during the playoffs, because during the playoffs, you have to take control over creating the playoff series. And I'll talk about that next. But the playoffs might be another time you would turn this off. But for the most part, if you're going to play a pretty normal league that's going to sim every so often, you're probably going to want this on so that your users can help you sim games, and you're not the only person doing it. I mean, I run a league that I've run for many years where we only sim one game every day. We play through the whole summer, one game a day. And so this is off because I'm in total control. I choose what time of day I'm going to sim that game, and I'm only going to sim the one game. But most leagues are going to have this on, and then you're going to pick how many hours between user sims. So what this means is this number 4, you can go from 2 to 8. So what this means is after a full day of games is simmed in your league, it will be, in this case, 4 hours before your users can sim another set of games, right? So if you remember that last screen we were on day 63, right? So if my users came to the site, they sim through game 63, when the time that last game sims on day 63, it's going to be 4 hours before my users can come back to the site and sim another set of games. And that's all controlled on the My League list page. And as you probably know, on the My League list page, you get this little sim next game box next to your league. So as a user, you can click that and you can sim the game that you want to sim, right? And that's how that works. That's how that user sim works. So that's the basics of setting up your league, importing players, getting your team set up, and then how you simulate through the season. Now, when the season is over, it's on you to set up the playoffs. And so this end of season task, I created this postseason wizard, which I think is really helpful to kind of walk you through all the different steps of the postseason, right? So this is a good page to get familiar with as you get to the end of the season, and it takes you through each step. You're going to want to probably at that point archive your season stats if you're going to keep your stats from season to season, the history. You're going to award your divisional trophies if you're going to do that. You're going to award your MVP and Cy Young winners if you're going to do that at the end of the regular season. You might want to set a draft order for next season. So if you're the type of league that's going to play again and you're going to do a draft and it's going to be based on last year's standings, you're going to want to set your draft order now. And then number 5, the big one, create the postseason schedule, right? So um, this is where you go in and you create your postseason schedule. So I click here, I'm back to the edit schedule page. And for the postseason, you're going to want to use option 1, add a new game to the schedule. And what you're going to want to do is, let's just say, the season is over, so I'm at day 163. You're going to pick your playoff teams. Let's just say Team 11 is playing Team 5. This is very important here. Type of game. Make sure you set which playoff game, which round this is, because that will format the schedule page so that your playoff schedule shows up on the schedule page. So you're going to say, first round of the playoffs, and then you can quickly build like a 7-game series by clicking this button here at the bottom. and you say add game, and then that's going to add, the 7 game series, or you have options to do other series too, right? Like 3 game, 4 game, or you could just individually create your own by just going game by game. If you were going to say do, a 3 game series, home away home, you could just say, create game 163. Then I'm going to flip the teams. I'm going to say team 5 and team 11. I'm going to flip home and away, and it's going to be day 164. And then that's my second game in the series. And then day 165, I'm going to flip the teams again. I'm going to say team 11 and team 5, and that's the third game in the series, right? And so you can build your playoff schedule however you want, round by round. So you're only going to build the first round now, obviously. Then you're going to sim those games. Based on what happens in those games, you're going to come back here and build your second round, third round, World Series, whatever you have, right? Your playoff schedule will be tracked on the schedule page. It's not showing up here now because I'm not in the playoffs in this league, but this is where you'll see the playoff schedule tracked. Like I was saying, there's a lot more on here to cover. It would be a long video to cover everything in detail, but the couple of things we haven't really gone over are really all about sort of creating fictional players, and also doing any sort of like progression, right? So there's apply player progression. So if you were the type of league that was going to um, uh, do either some sort of fictional or real life progression from season to season, this is where you would do that. Your players would age, and their age would change and their stats would change based on the style of progression. And this would become a really long video if I got into that topic. That's probably a topic that deserves its own. Um, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. But once your season's over, your postseason is over, you've granted all your awards, you're going to go back to the postseason wizard. It's got, after your World Series, and then you can do your championship trophy, award the owner a ring, clear your compiled stats, clear your game results, clear your team rosters, assuming that's the kind of league you run. You've got the option to age your players, which is that player progression, retire players if you're doing that, and then you could create a new schedule if you wanted to, or you could just keep the same schedule you have, and then you're ready to restart and play another season. And you can play as many seasons as you want, as frequently as you want. People have asked me, if they donate and they get their own league, how many seasons are they eligible to play? You play as many as you want in that year that you have been given when you first start your league. So I hope this was at least a little bit helpful to sort of spin through some of the commissioner tools and give you a little bit of an idea of how you would start your own league, what that level of effort would be. It's really, once you get used to all this, it's, like I said, it's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy. Once you get accustomed to these tools, you can get leagues going pretty quickly. We didn't really get into drafts here. Actually, I'm going to touch on that really quick because I do get a lot of questions about drafts. Because a lot of people ask, how could I set up my league in the same way that the auto drafts are done? And so there's a bunch of different options with the draft. So you've got prepare a live draft. This would set up your draft room, right? So if you were going to do some sort of a live draft where you all were going to show up at the site at one time and draft together, you'd be doing a live draft. Or if you were just going to open up your draft room and say, we're going to do a slow draft, we're going to let everyone draft when they can. We're going to give everyone a certain amount of time. Maybe it's 8 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours, whatever it is, to make their pick. You could turn on the live draft room. The way that you turn on the draft room is you set your current round and your number of rounds. So if let's say I'm going to do a 20 player draft and I'm currently on round 1, this would basically turn on my draft. You can make it a snake draft or a one way. And then seconds per pick. So seconds per pick is just a visual indicator. This isn't a sophisticated draft room that's going to actually auto pick for someone when the clock runs out, like you're probably used to in a fantasy league. The draft room is just not that sophisticated, but it's at least a visual indicator to encourage people to make a pick in a certain amount of time, or you could just have no timer at all. Um, this strictly use owner ranks. This is all about the draft queue that owners can set up. So if they aren't around and you auto pick for them, it would pick from there. And age of players, so max age of players, da da da. You can have emails after picks. So emails after picks are really valuable if you're doing a slow draft. So if you're doing a draft where um, you're going to open up the draft room, someone picks, and you want the next person to be notified via email that he should come and draft, that's where this comes in handy. If you're not doing a slow draft, you're probably going to want to turn this off because you don't want everyone to get emailed after every pick because everyone's already in the draft room. But if you're doing a slow draft, you're going to want this on. And so you've also got this option here, turn on ability to pre-rank players. So that essentially turns on what's called the supplemental draft. In this case, it's going to serve as your draft queue for the live draft. So you could turn that on and then save your changes. And then once I do that, it gives you a note here. Please make sure you set your draft order. So it gives you a link to the set draft order page. And this is where you can set your draft order. Just make sure you've actually saved a draft order. Otherwise, your draft room is not going to work very well. And then if I go back to my league homepage, now that I've turned the draft room on, I get a little alert here that says your draft room is currently open. And that means anyone in your league can go to the draft room now and start drafting. So like I said, you could do this as a live draft or you could do this as a slow draft. Once you turn the draft room on, the team that's on the clock can come in here and make a pick. And you as the commissioner have this little button that says show commish links, and that gives you the option to auto pick for any team or skip a pick for any team. So the auto pick is going to attempt to use the player's queue if it can first. If it can't, it'll just pick someone. It'll just make a pick for the team. And so that's basically setting up your live draft. Now, let's say you wanted to set up a draft that was more like the auto leagues, which are, if for those of you familiar with the auto leagues, there's an option for what's called a quick draft, which basically gives you a subset of players and you quickly draft your team based on that subset. Or there's something called the daily draft, which is basically a draft round that runs every 8 hours. You don't use the draft room, you only use your draft queue for the daily draft. Or there's also a third thing called the favorite teams draft, and those are the leagues where you pick one franchise and you can pick any 4 years from that franchise's history and build your team off of that. And all those options are under the set, auto, or supplemental draft link. So this set, auto, or supplemental draft gives you a bunch of options. You can toggle the auto draft on. So the auto draft is currently off in this league. If I have the 3 options here, right? So I can set it on quick draft, on favorite team draft, or on auto daily draft. And those are the 3 options that I just talked about. And so if you do that, like let's say I wanted this league to be a favorite team draft league, I can update that. And what that is going to do then when I go to my team page in this league, it's going to give me a draft my team button. And when I click that draft my team button, it takes me to the favorite team draft. Now the season has started, so the draft is no longer open. So you're not going to actually see the favorite team draft here, but that's how you turn it on in your particular league. In this case, it doesn't really apply because the season has started in my particular league. I'm just going to turn that off, but that's how you set up drafts. And that's really, that's definitely not it. There's more to this page, obviously, but like I was saying before, I wanted to give folks an idea of sort of the level of effort it takes to get something going. I think once you're familiar with this stuff, it is pretty quick. You know, I run a few different leagues myself as a commissioner, and And since I'm familiar with the tools, I would say, it doesn't take me any more than maybe 30 minutes to get a league going. It doesn't take me any more than maybe 30 minutes at the end of a season to reset the league and start over again. It's really pretty quick once you're kind of familiar with everything. So again, I hope this video was helpful to answer some of those initial questions, give you a little bit of a look at the commissioner tools, and give you a sense for what it's like to be a commissioner on pennantchase.com.